Can you believe it? Lego, one of the most powerful and beloved brands on the entire planet, almost died. And the reason why is not what you'd think. It wasn't because kids stopped loving the classic brick. It was because the company itself forgot what made it so special in the first place. So let's wind the clock back to 2004. Lego is in an absolute freefall. And I'm not talking about just a bad year. This was a full-blown crisis. Sales had crashed by nearly 30%. The company was just bleeding cash. And honestly, things were looking really, really desperate. And this number, well, it says it all. A net loss of almost 2 billion Danish kroner in just 1 year. That is a figure so huge, it threatened to literally wipe the family-owned company right off the map. Which, of course, leads to the big question. How on earth does a brand this iconic, this loved by millions, end up teetering on the edge of collapse? The answer is a wild story of chaos, complexity, and a company that had completely lost its way. To really understand what happened, we've got to look inside Lego. Because the financial disaster you saw on the balance sheet, that was just a symptom of a much deeper problem. Total operational chaos. And here's where it all started to unravel. An uncontrolled, absolute explosion of complexity. In less than a decade, the number of unique, distinct Lego components more than doubled. Just try to imagine the logistical nightmare of managing a supply chain with that many different parts. It was completely unsustainable. And all that complexity came with a jaw-dropping price tag. See, every single new Lego piece needs its own incredibly precise mold. The most complicated ones could cost up to 300,000 euros each. So every single time a designer decided to create a new piece instead of using an old one, it was a huge financial gamble for the company. This chaos on the inside completely crippled their supply chain. They had no idea which sets would sell, so their forecasting was basically just guesswork. The result? You'd walk into a store and it'd either be swamped with unpopular sets nobody wanted, or the shelves where the hit toys should have been were just empty. It got so bad that at its lowest point, their on-time delivery rate to stores was a shocking 5%. 5. And this quote, wow. This quote from a Walmart buyer to a Lego executive just captures the whole crisis perfectly. Retailers were completely fed up. I mean, when your biggest partner is seriously thinking about replacing your product with dog food, you know you have hit rock bottom. So that was the operational mess. But what was causing it all? This wasn't just a case of bad management. No, this was a fundamentally flawed strategy. And this is the key insight right here. The internal chaos was really just the tip of the iceberg. The real problem was so much deeper. It was a complete failure of strategy, and it was born from a fundamental misunderstanding of what made Lego so great in the first place. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Lego's strategy was simple. More. More of everything. They thought their amazing brand name could just be slapped onto anything and it would sell. So they jumped into video games, movies, clothing, watches, and even a massive expansion of their theme parks. Their big ambition was to become the next Disney. But here's the fatal flaw in that whole idea. Just because people love your brand doesn't mean you can suddenly make a great video game or fashionable kids' clothes. Lego was diving headfirst into these crowded, competitive markets where it had absolutely zero experience and no real competitive edge. You know, there's actually a business term for this, stuck in the middle. It's what happens when you try to be everything to everyone and you just end up being nothing special to anyone. You're not the cheapest option and you're not the best option. You're just there. And that was Lego. They diluted their core strength by chasing growth in areas they simply didn't understand. And the decisions they made internally just poured gasoline on the fire. Managers were rotated so often, like every 6 to 12 months, that nobody could build a long-term vision. And then they moved design studios away from the company's heartland in Denmark to fashion hubs like London and Milan. This completely disconnected the designers from the company culture and the practical realities of manufacturing, which, you guessed it, only led to more and more new complex pieces. Okay, so with Lego on the verge of total collapse, a radical change was needed, and fast. This is the story of how they save themselves by going back to what they do best. The person who kicked this all off was Jürgen Vig Knudstorp. He took over as the first non-family CEO in late 2004. He was a young former consultant, and he knew he had to move quickly and make some really tough, even unpopular decisions. His very first move was a direct assault on all that complexity. He basically took a giant axe and slashed the number of unique Lego components in half, from over 12,000 down to a much more manageable 6,000. That one decision had a massive ripple effect, simplifying everything from design and manufacturing to logistics and sales. And that was just the start. The turnaround plan was a masterclass in ruthless focus. They sold off the Legoland theme parks to generate cash. They challenged designers to be more creative by using the pieces they already had. And they moved design back to Denmark to reconnect with the company's core culture. Every single decision was about one thing: getting back to the brick. Lego's journey back from the brink is now a classic business turnaround story, and it holds some incredibly valuable lessons for pretty much any company out there. So here's the core lesson in all of this. Lego's crisis wasn't caused by competitors or by changing tastes. The company almost failed because it got distracted by all these shiny new ventures and completely forgot its own identity. A simple, brilliant system of play that no one else could copy. This brings us to the first huge takeaway from their story. Chasing growth for the sake of growth is a trap. Real growth is the result of a good strategy. It's not the strategy itself. For Lego, the blind pursuit of more led them down a path that almost killed the company. And that leads right to the second takeaway. Winning isn't about doing more things. It's about being the absolute best at your core business. Lego's comeback proves that sometimes the path to victory is by doing less, but doing it better than anyone else on the planet. And it all comes down to this timeless idea from the strategist Michael Porter. Lego didn't just fix its operations, it rediscovered its strategy. And the most crucial part of that strategy was having the discipline to say no. No to distractions, no to complexity, and no to anything that weakened the core. In the end, that's what saved the brick.